teachers of Reddit, who are the students you remember from 5, 10, 20 years ago, and what did they do to be remembered? Hi Reddit guys, subscribe now, or I will call your boss. 5 years ago, I hosted an 8th grade study hall and classroom, a computer lab. Study hall is a joke, so as long as students stayed docile and had something out in front of them, I was happy. Computers were only allowed to be used for work. One student was looking to write an essay on Microsoft Word. I approved. He sat in the seat where I couldn't see his screen. Big mistake. Towards the end of study hall, he gathered a crowd around his computer. I went to go investigate. Upon arrival, I see a thank you for your order screen on Amazon for $15,000 worth of computer parts. The kicker? The credit card he used to order the parts was found on a website that had an inventory of stolen credit card numbers. Oh boy. Kinda reminds me of my computer class in high school where the teacher was bragging about how great the school's blocking program was for not safe for work sites. Another kid in class with some computer skills challenged him. We were looking at Peen in a few minutes, lol. He stopped everything pretty quickly after that. Generally those blokers only work for English language websites. All you need is to be able to read and write in a language other than English, and the program is only a mild annoyance rather than a complete roadblock. Not my own story as a teacher, though I am one as well, but a story I heard from one of my high school teachers. Mr. F was teaching oral interpretation at that time, basically a class on giving speeches, and there was this one student, we'll call him Billy. Whenever there was any category of speech, Billy would always find some way to give a bizarre and slightly macabre speech that still technically fit the requirements. When the class had to give a speech on how to do something, Billy demonstrated a procedure to build a miniature guillotine and used it on a Barbie doll in front of the class. It worked. When the class had to give a persuasive speech, Billy gave a speech about why OJ was actually innocent. But the real kicker was when the students had to give an informative speech about one of their hobbies. Billy discussed at length his hobby of taking the daily obituary from the paper and crossing the dead people out of the phone book. He proceeded to show off his phone book with name after name of now deceased individuals crossed out. This kid is baller as hell. I coached swimming for a prep school. So although you wouldn't classify me a teacher, I taught. I worked with a kid who was literally the most intelligent, skilled, and hard-working individual I had ever met. Still to this day, his parents were wealthy, so in addition to normal practice, they paid for me to train him one-on-one in the mornings. The pool opened at 5 AM. I would usually arrive at 4:55 AM. His parents put the accountability in him, and so he wouldn't wake them up in the morning. He would ride his bike, no matter what the weather forecast was. Not only that, but I never beat him to the pool. He was always waiting for me when I arrived. We would go over the plan for the day, and most often, he would change the intervals and distances to make them more challenging. The thing was, I was already making the workout as hard as possible. Fast forward to last week, as a freshman in scholarship to Stanford, he recently broke the Pac-12 record for fastest mile ever swum at the championships. We keep up on social media, and I know that he'll be incredibly successful later on in life. Being a swimmer myself for about 10 years now, I applaud that kid. Not only do morning practices suck, but he put effort into making them harder. The kid has got something bright ahead of him. I had a student with cerebral palsy in my British Lit class. I knew on day one that we'd get along, because he was one of the few who laughed at my Monty Python reference. Dude was in a wheelchair and was in foster care, but he never complained or made excuses. He busted us on all of his assignments, participated in group work and class discussions, and had a wicked sense of humor. I got to choose a student of the month, and I chose him. Come to find out that it was the first time he'd ever been honored for academics in school, even though he was intelligent and a good student. I'm fortunate that I had an opportunity to be his teacher and get to know him. Teacher for 7 years now. Special education. My kids are all fairly memorable in their own ways, but there are certain kids that come to mind much easily than others and with more frequency. for me, it is a little boy with Down syndrome who I think of involuntarily almost daily, and to be honest, I feel slightly ashamed of the why. He was a kindergartner and just learning to count. He had very limited verbal abilities, and while he was working with a speech language pathologist, during math time our focus was math and not speech. And the way he counted was unique. He couldn't pronounce the numbers correctly, but once he mastered counting to 10, he counted everything and loudly. 1, 2, we, bear, by, see, archie, n, n, pa. Each sound overemphasized and stretched out. I work out regularly, and in working out, counting your sets is fairly standard. At the time, his counting just stuck in my head when I'd be doing my sets. To this day, I cannot count anything in my head without counting in his voice, especially when I'm working out. I have a feeling this will never go away. Threatened to kill me my first lesson in the school. 10 years on, he's just been put in prison for robbing an old lady and breaking her hand. Classy. Row. Yep. Worth remembering that guy. No longer a teacher. By 5 years ago I was teaching freshman English and this kid just was not doing any work. I didn't want to fail him and tried to meet with him and figure out what was going on. I suspected home issues. He kept saying he had a lot going on and that he would do the work, he was just distracted. Finally contact the mum, because he is not doing anything and I'm worried he is going to fail. She emails me this long email that basically said her kid was a crafty a-hole who could sell ice to an Eskimo and not to trust anything he says. In the same paragraph proceeded to tell me, well, he did become a father in the fall, so he has had his hands full with that. What the frick, lady? I was more concerned about the blasé way she talked about her 14-year-old reproducing. Yeah, he dealt with a lot. Probably still is. 20 years ago there was a little girl in my class who was rather plump, clean, never spoke and didn't have many friends. I'm only saying this to describe the sort of kid she was. One day she was slow to pack away and it was just me and her in the classroom. I had a big bag of sweets and asked her if she liked one. She very nervously said yes, and I said she could only have one if she stopped and talked to me while we had them. We had a lovely chat about her dog and her family, and I picked a book off my shelf I thought she'd like to read. Every week after that she'd hang back. We'd share some sweets or whatever either of us had in our lunchbox and we'd talk about things. After a few months of this she said, "I hope you don't mind giving up your break," and I said to her, "I look forward to it. The class is so big we don't get time to talk and I haven't got a daughter, so this is lovely." When the year ended she had another teacher, but she'd still pop in and say hello less and less often as she made friends and grew in confidence. 6 months ago I bumped into her while out shopping. I gave her a big hug. She said she remembers being very lonely at 11, but talking to me gave her something to look forward to. She went to university and was now a primary school teacher, and she always keeps sweets in her desk. This and the bloke with the beard driving the number 11 bus who wound down his window and shouted, "Hello Miss Div." I'm still reading. 5 years ago, a senior that was a barely getting by usually failing didn't give a crap kid. Talked back, total ass that was going into the Marines like his dad and certainly wasn't interested in web design, but had to take a tech course. I could eventually tell he was just trying to be a badass for the girl next to him that was a complete bad girl. So I separated them at the end of first 6 weeks and I somehow got him interested. He became one of the best in the class. I have no idea how I did it, but something clicked. They eventually did a group project making a website for a business idea from one of my other classes. Not only did he lead the team and make an awesome site, but he helped the team from the other class with their business idea. Finished my class with an A. He said his first A since elementary school. I was so damn proud. I knew he would never use the ability to do web design in the Marines, but maybe it showed him he could succeed. I now live to do that for another kid. I will always remember 2 students I had 10 years ago. A girl and a boy. They were senior year of high school and about to graduate. They were dating and she was pregnant with his baby. I had a great relationship with them both and I had hopes they would make excellent parents. She went into labor in the middle of my class and he had to rush her out. They came to my wedding last year with their 9-year-old child smiley face. If you got pregnant at my high school, they transferred you to the alternative school across town. They tried to expel my mum when she was pregnant with me because she had to wear maternity pants, which were not an approved part of school uniform. She is now an MD, PhD. I'm pretty sure she has been counting down the days to high school reunion for a decade. Holy shoot, I can't even imagine going into an MD plus PhD program with the workload. Add on the kid. She's crazy, yo. When I was newly qualified, I had a huge class of 36 pupils. I had one boy who was returning from the local pupil referral unit for behavior support. He had been through a really rough childhood and had awful attachment disorder issues. I remember on the first day I met him, we had to evacuate the room because he was trashing it. I spent a lot of time working with him. When he started with me, he could barely write his name. By the end of the year, he was writing stories. It took a lot of work, but he trusted me, so was willing to try. He was a lovely kid. That was nearly 10 years ago now. He'd be 18 now. Okay Reddit guys, subscribe now, or I will call your boss.